Welcome to part two of our Ashes Mashup with the Murali End podcast. In part one, we discussed in detail about the upcoming Ashes series. And in this part two, we move on to something similar in Sri Lanka, which is the inter-school big matches. Then later in the episode, we talk about what's the latest news from Yorkshire racism scandal. So hope you enjoy this episode. Please send us your feedback to srilankancricketpodcast@gmail.com. Talking about Ashes, when you come to Sri Lanka, Tommy, there's a different kind of Ashes happening in March in Sri Lanka. It's called big matches.
I've heard about this, but I don't know anything about it, so I want to know more. I've heard it's even bigger than the Ashes in many ways, and there's a lot of drinking involved.
It is for my family, and obviously I can't speak for you guys, but for my family, for the men of my family who all went to St. Peter's College, which I believe Sohan also went to as well.
Yeah.
And also is the premier school in Sri Lanka. It is the biggest deal in the world. Like, really? Generally for my dad, it doesn't matter. Like 96 is one thing, but they're winning the big match, because I think most of the St. Peter St. Joseph's games end in draws, right? There's never a result in those matches, right?
They
only play 2 days.
They only play 2 days. What?
Bro told me to play for 3 days. That's why.
But so my dad actually went to St. Peter's from 4 till 16, and then went to Royal for sixth form. So he kind of tries to keep an eye on that as well. But St. Peter's is his passion, right? The passion people have in Sri Lanka for their schools is unbelievable. My dad and his batchmates still fly in from all over the world, and they're in like their 60s now, to go and watch these games.
Is it a bit like college football in America?
Yeah, I think college football is anything that's comparable, right? What was it like? Because you guys both played in them, right? What was it like to play in? Because to set the scene a bit, they're done in the big international stadiums, and it's a total sellout. They're on radio and TV. Now you can they're even streamed online as well, aren't they? And I
think the best way to describe it is you got 19-year-old, 18-year-old kids playing against each other in front of packed crowds. So the packed crowds are the past pupils or students who've been to the schools, and the current students. If you got 20, 30, with us played for Royal, and that was the Royal St. Thomas big match. I went for St. Peter's, so St. Peter's was a St. Joseph. It's just a tradition against schools that you play with. I've lost count how long the Royal Tournament has been going on.
142 years.
Wow.
It's incredible.
So this year it was the 142nd Battle of the Blues, and they haven't stopped for the both world wars. So they survived both world wars.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy.
the longest running cricket encounter in the world.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Is it really?
So
wow.
That's our breeding ground in terms of bringing cricketers up younger ages. I'm not sure exactly, but having been in Melbourne or Australia now 6 years running, here generally junior sport is more of a participation event where you might open 1 week, you bat at number 11 the other week. Back in Sri Lanka, you're designated opener from your 13-year-old. That's your role, kind of. So you pretty much play competitive cricket against other schools. And the lead up is by 18, 19-year-old, you're playing in front of packed crowds. So they learn competitive cricket at a very young age. Also, the scrutiny is, if a guy drops a catch, he gets sledged out there in the field in front of 20,000 kids. So,
as it should be.
Yeah. So
what's the pressure like, right? Because you guys are 18, 19 going into these games. the days leading up to it, because it's written about in the papers. You know that there's people coming from all over the world to watch it. The pressure must be unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
It's like representing your country.
Yeah,
it's crazy because there's lots of expectations and you want to do well, and as you said, the added pressure of the media and your classmates, they'll come and pat you back, say don't disappoint us. It's bloody crazy. It's and if you look at the crowds, if you have a test match going on at the same time, you will find about 500 people watching the test match, and you get a packed crowd in a big match.
Is it a big opportunity to impress girls?
Absolutely.
Because that's all that really matters.
Cricketers have had their marriages during the from this.
Really, I'm not surprised.
But yeah, Vida plays. I mean, Vida had played for Royal. That traditional encounter. I mean, I don't think we've ever had a test match crowd cover the number of audience that goes to a Royal tournament. And the whole lead up into it is, I mean, different schools got different traditions. It's from Vida will more have hands-on it. They'll probably parade around with the lead up to the games of, just bragging rights, we're going to win this game or whatnot. The whole week is a lead up of prepping for the game. And if you do well and if you win, it's like a national holiday for the school. They don't, it's a school holiday declared, and they march around again, around the city, parading the trophy. So that's how massive encounter it is.
Who's won it more times?
It's a tie with our big match at the moment. So because no one wants to lose, it's always end up in a draw. Unless
they always have no results, right? You just play for 3 days and then nobody wants to lose.
I mean, some of the coaches would be happy with a draw because it's so much pressure losing it. It's like it's like a soccer. How can I think? Who's like, can't imagine. His career is gone if he loses a big match, pretty much. So that's how important it is. Even from a player point of view, some captains haven't recovered well from school points. I mean, being a captain of a school and then losing the big match has the down effects as well. It's for a kid who is 18, 19 years old who loses a game, it takes a big impact on them to come back. So we see the positive side of, if it's a winning captain, yes, they go on. In effect, he feels like he's let down the school, or there's a lot of pressure there. So that's the other side of a player not being on top of a result. So but it does make a lot of cricketers out of it as well. That's why a lot of you could have asked, how do these so much pressure, they look so natural playing games at a young age? It's because of that small upbringing. So but crazy times. That's more from a player point of view. Point of view, spot on. You've got guys who are knocked out in the first 2-3 hours of just down in the cool ice beers and the heavy liquors there.
I don't know if I assume this doesn't happen. I don't know if this happens for other big matches, but I know for the Battle of the Saints, they do the worshipping of the bottles, right? Where they I've not been to it, I've only been told about it. I think, do they not? Everyone buys a bottle. So that there's a big spirits drinking culture there, Tommy, and they take it. Where do they take it to? They take it to outside one of the statues outside the school, and they basically get the bottle blessed by the statue, and then they take it to the match and drink it at the game.
Take good care of them. But there is liquor on the one game. I remember I was playing in that and I was feeling on the boundary, and then you see the spectators come in. Those water canisters where you just top up in the lunch rooms. That guy had emptied that water and filled it up with, hard liquor, and they just bring it in. That's the enjoyment they're in for. It's like, you don't want to be close. Like it's just heavy.
Have you been, Mark?
I've not been. My dad's been. The problem is over here, like when it's February, March is quite a strange time of year in England to go away. I mean, I really want to go. Like, probably it's up there with all my anything else. You know, going to Sabina Park or going to watch Boxing Day Test. I think going to a big match would just be absolutely, like, the atmosphere would be absolutely incredible. The story, like when I grew up, and like my dad and his friends telling me stories about heroics that were in this from the 70s and the 80s of players and how they went on to play for Sri Lanka. What I don't like, the thing that always gets me is when you listen to people who are fans of their school talk about these games, it's like the stuff that players do in the big match is almost like transcends anything they might go on to do internationally. So, wow. It's incredible, isn't it? And the other thing I really like about what's happened in Sri Lankan cricket is that even for the smaller schools, so the schools that we're talking about over here are kind of the bigger Colombo schools that are really established. But even over the last few years, even with the smaller schools are starting to develop big matches as well and have, cricket teams that are able to compete more with the other sides as well. So it's something that is kind of, becoming a bigger, wider part of Sri Lankan culture, not just for the kind of Colombo elite, right? Which is brilliant.
When are we all going over there next year?
Next March. What do you think? Right. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do the podcast live from pitch side. That'd be amazing, isn't it?
I'd love that.
Yeah,
it'll be a lovely atmosphere. We've got the Sri Lankan bands, the papre bands as we call it. They'll put up a party, a lot of noise, a lot of sound. Just good stuff to be around. And if there's a test match happening, if there's international cricket, even better. So
amazing.
Could you imagine being a test cricketer playing Sri Lanka, right? And going, so weird. I mean, everyone told me Sri Lanka's really into cricket. There's only like 500 people in the stands. And then going out and noticing that there's like 20,000 people watching two
watching the young guys play cricket.
I think one time Tony Gregg mentioned this in a test match. I think they were playing in Galle or somewhere. And he mentioned, apparently there's a school cricket game. Has about 15,000 people attending, and I don't see many people.
The other thing that's worth mentioning when you brought up commentary is that when you watch Sri Lanka play cricket, the Sri Lankan commentators always reference what the players did in school. Like in T20 in the World Cup, they're always talking about Sri Lanka and Hasaranga were in the same school side together, or Barnacle Rajapaksa scored lots of runs at school. And like outside of Sri Lanka, that has no context at all. You're like, because I mean, like, I don't know what school Jimmy even went to, but I'm sure he took loads of wickets at school. It makes no sense to anyone who doesn't understand the school's cricket culture of Sri Lanka, right? But
it's not really a big thing over here, to be honest. Like school rivalries or anything. Well, I mean, I went to a state school, not a private school, so maybe it was more so at private schools. But at state schools, it was just we played matches, and it wasn't a big deal. No one was watching other than my dad, telling me to bat quicker when I'm like 20 overs, opening the batting and being like 14 overs in, still only being on 9, playing my 4 defenses.
You're not gonna get into a Sri Lankan school side with those stats, right?
No way. But when even like the biggest schools from England go on tour to Sri Lanka, they don't play the big schools in Sri Lanka. They play like club sides, because I'm pretty sure if you put like a decent, even if you put like Harrow or Eton, which have like, they actually have a big match because they play each other at Lords, right? I'm pretty sure if you took Eton or Harrow and took them to SL to play a game, they'd get like if they played Royal College, for example, I think they'd get absolutely torn apart. Like, I think they'd struggle to make a triple-digit score, I'd imagine.
One reason why Sri Lanka is competitive in the international level is our school cricket system. So you said, we don't have much infrastructure or, facilities as the other countries because of the school system that produce a lot of good cricketers. And it's easy to identify talent when you look at a player playing in front of 10,000, 15,000 people. And if he can handle that at school age, that's very easy to identify a good player.
Competition is always going to, I think, breed more success than sort of good facilities or, or over. I think a problem we have over in England, and my teams that I play LMS. You guys have that in Australia, last man stands cricket.
Oh yeah.
Which is like 8-a-side, 20 overs, just like a bit of fun sort of thing.
Yeah.
So play that and
just played last man stands, I think.
Yeah. So I play that, and I play 40 50 over cricket on the weekends, but in LMS especially, the league is probably 80-90% of the players are Pakistani, Indian or Sri Lankan. And the difference I notice, because I captain a team, and the difference I notice and my team's about half and half, like white British and Asian British. And there's a lot more freedom to the Asian way of playing, and there's a lot less emphasis on, we're always told by the Asian players, stop focusing on your sort of forward and backwards and your playing with a straight bat and stuff. Not that's a bad thing, but get out of that mindset and just sort of play the ball as it comes. Play like, and that's a problem with, not a problem, because you look at Joe Root, someone like Joe Root, and he's got the most beautiful technique in the world. But what I found growing up and being taught to play cricket by sort of old white PE teachers, that there's only two shots, and that's forward and backward. You know what I mean? On your front foot or on your back foot. Whereas exactly. You'd rather go to that than sort of, a pull shot or something. So, that's a sort of, it's just a thing I've noticed the last few years from playing with, growing up playing with predominantly white people to, in my adult life, playing with a mixture of white and Asian people. There's just a lot more freedom.
Well, you have to think of, like, Malinga basically is a uniquely Sri Lankan player, because there's no other cricket system in the world that would have just let him develop the way he developed, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
If he had any sort of training in England, there's no coaching I ever had as a kid in cricket that would like, they just wouldn't let you bowl like that.
Look at Jimmy. They tried to. Jimmy broke into the team as a young boy, into the England team, and then he didn't get picked for a couple of years, because they tried to change his technique. Like they said you shouldn't, look, on his follow through, he shouldn't be looking down with his head down. And then he changed it back, luckily, and became the player he is. But that's a big problem. We are way too focused on technique. I think in England, it's like coaching young players, and again, going back to Owen Morgan, hopefully less so now. And hopefully, I would hope that the school systems and the coaching systems are looking at this white ball England team and saying, there's different ways of expressing yourselves on a cricket pitch rather than just playing a forward or backward defense.
Just to sum it up, with our school structure, like Vidar said, that's a strong point or breeding ground for us as professional cricketers or in our country. The infrastructure at school level is pretty good. Like, if a lot of the schools have, good grounds, turf wickets, side nets, we've got pools to get their strength and conditioning done. Some schools even have the luxury of gyms set up. So that's pretty much similar to a first class structure at a smaller scale, and ground for the school cricketers, which venture out through. As soon as we go into first class structures, there are limitations, but at least we have the grassroots done to a certain point. And we are hearing more changes done there, so that it will be good. That means cricket's moving in the right direction for us. Something we'd like to venture into next would be, if you guys are all right, we'll try to slightly disconnect from the cricket that we're talking to a topic that is happening out there. You guys have been covering a lot with your programs as well. Is the issues that has been rising from the Yorkshire scandal. So I'd like to know what further developments we had. Mark, we had a really good chat, and the next few weeks or days have been just, hearing more stuff coming out. I think there are more cases coming out from the Essex camp now. So would be easy.
Yeah.
We'd like to venture into that topic if you guys are all right with it.
Yeah, of course. So Azim Rafiq gave his evidence to the DCMS Select Committee last Tuesday, and then the topic just dominated the news cycle for about 48 hours afterwards, to the point like I can't remember a moment of kind of like that involving a British Asian person, or actually even a kind of moment of racism in the UK that has dominated the news to that extent. And obviously within kind of 24 hours, the allegations, or not the allegations because he's come out and confirmed it, the anti-Semitic messages he'd sent out before kind of resurfaced. The minute he gave his evidence, I said, look, this is brilliant, but you know that there's going to be people out there who are going to try and take him down. They've been trying to take him down for years. They've, in a way, they've kind of got on top of it. The thing that I always think is that when you talk about racism, it's not a binary thing. It's not you're a racist, you're not a racist, right? It's much more nuanced than that. I'll be honest, I'm among friends here. I think it's really difficult for white people to understand that, because they really struggle with what racism is and how it affects people. But I think the main kind of damage was done with Azim Rafiq with his testimony, and that now, if you don't want to believe it, if you're going down that kind of Fox News right wing kind of thing, you can kind of wave, oh, look, this anti-Semitism stuff, he's not perfect. Why is he crying about this kind of thing? But actually, to me, when I reflect back on it, it's like the culture at Yorkshire was so bad. Even people who weren't, even people who come in innocently have got caught up in this. And the next thing they know is Azim Rafiq is both being bullied and being a bully as well, kind of thing. The next big moment for it will be, the next big moment for it will be that there will be a report released by the Select Committee, which I think will be early January, potentially during the last Ashes test. The other issue that's kind of surfaced over the last kind of 72 hours is around Michael Vaughan, because he was initially meant to be part of the BBC's coverage of the Ashes, the radio coverage, and also was going to be on, the TV in the UK will be on BT Sport, and their plan was to take Fox Sport from Australia's coverage of it, where Michael Vaughan is part of the team. What I've heard this morning is that Fox in Australia don't intend to drop him, which means that BT Sport are having to put together pretty last minute now a whole team to do the commentary in-house. And now Michael Vaughan has kind of become part of this wider culture war that we've all found ourselves in. And, actually, I think when Azim Rafiq gave his evidence, there was players like Matthew Hoggard who came out immediately and kind of apologised for any harm caused. And to me, I find it quite grating that Matthew Vaughan, he's a former England captain. Pardon?
You said Matthew Vaughan.
Oh, sorry, Michael Vaughan. He's a former England captain and, a broadcaster as well. Can't own up to any harm he may have caused. I'm not necessarily saying he has to come out and say, I remember saying these things, but I think it's quite a bad look for him. And I suspect it's probably ended his broadcasting aspirations, unless he manages to either create his own platform or goes to another part of the world where the incident hasn't maybe had the impact it's had in the UK.
He'll always get work, though. I think. I don't think it'll end his career. Like in terms, it will in Britain in the sort of mainstream press anyway. But we've got sort of new media outlets like God, I can't remember what's it called.
GB News.
GB News, sorry, yeah. So
Yeah.
he'll have things like that, and I don't know. I've never been to Australia, so I can't speak for it. But I don't know if the fact that they're still employing him, and this was sort of my perception beforehand, that it's not as big a deal. And Australia, in terms of race, Australia is probably quite a bit behind. That's not to say Britain still has loads of problems with race, but I think most of society is generally sort of aware and sensitive to it. So I think Michael Vaughan sadly will tend to still get work, but in terms of the mood over here and stuff, I think there's just quite a lot of not fear. Like I'm a Lancashire fan, and at first my dad's a Yorkshire fan. He was born and raised in Yorkshire, and at first I was almost quite smug about it, in the sense that of, you know, we're rival team, War of the Roses and that, and it's probably the most historic rivalry in English cricket. Like every time Lancashire and Yorkshire play, that it will be a sellout, like no matter what. But it's more than that. It shouldn't be like a points winning thing. And I worry that stories like this are just going to keep emerging from all around the UK in every
almost every county now.
Every county
got some
incident
that's come up.
I so. And to what Mark was saying about, you know, if you're white, you can't sort of understand it. Like, I think that's definitely right. And me and Mark have spoke about it a lot. And I tried to explain to Mark, just from like trying to see basically the racist point of view, that a lot of people will now turn on Azim Rafiq, sadly, because of the anti-Semitic stuff and the stuff that he was guilty of as well. But I don't think necessarily even Gary Balance and a lot of players that were bred in that Yorkshire system. I think you said it on the podcast we did last week, Mark, the Bain quote, like, I was born in the darkness. And I think that sadly, all those players of that generation, and I'm assuming generations before, especially at Yorkshire, there was just toxic lad culture sort of atmosphere there. That they're all, I don't even know if they're necessarily racists, all of them. They've just brought up in a terrible, terrible culture, which made them sort of be drug taking, racist, cheating on their wives, sexist. This is all alleged, but from what I hear, there is a whole culture of that going on, especially at Yorkshire, which is unsurprising for a group of well-paid young men, I suppose.
So, yeah, the standards of professionalism, and I say this as somebody who's knows quite a lot of people involved in professional rugby and played rugby with a lot of people who have been professional rugby players, international players, and also people who, and somebody who also knows professional footballers as well. The standard of professionalism, mate, from what I'm hearing from Yorkshire Cricket Club, is very low. Like, it's quite, some of the stuff I'm hearing that's taking place, I'm like, wow, I can't believe professional sportsmen have done that. But there you go. My worry is about going forward in English cricket is actually there isn't as much at this point. So we're about 10 days, about 9 days of what since the testimony came out, is I don't think there's the appetite to make the changes that need to be made. I'm still hearing and still seeing the same people who were involved in cricket 2-3 weeks ago, thinking they were doing an all right job and there wasn't a problem, come up with really kind of poor solutions for it. I think the only way around this solution is kind of full transparency. So the minute you join a cricket club, whatever age you are, that there is somebody, almost an independent person, monitoring what you need to do to step up to the next level. So do you know what I mean? So if it's like, if you're in the system and you've got aspirations of playing higher, I can go, right, I'm in, Tommy is a 16-year-old at Burnley Cricket Club. What does he need to do to get into the county system? Right, he needs to improve this part of his game. I'm still seeing talks about, we need to sit down and have diversity discussions, when actually I think society's kind of a bit past that. You don't need to be sitting down with someone to say, don't use the P word.
Yeah. A lot of clubs, I know a lot of clubs here have codes of conduct, which are sort of agreed upon, like vaguely read and signed off. But you have to remember a lot of those and this is all levels, like even lower levels of the game. The club I play for is a code of conduct, and we don't even have a clubhouse. And but you have to remember a lot of those codes of conduct are written by white people and written a long time ago, and a lot has changed since they've been written. So
what's the role of ECB? I mean, I know counties have the independent bodies governing cricket, but what's the role of ECB? I mean, don't they have to come out and implement?
So I don't know if you guys saw this, right? But the ECB, the head of the ECB, was meant to come be in front of the select committee and answer questions. So he turned up with 3 other people from the ECB. So there was a whole committee from the ECB, and they basically couldn't answer any of the questions. I actually thought in some ways that was more damning than anything Azim Rafiq said, because the ECB should be, their 2 primary roles are to make sure that you provide a good level of cricket that in England that feeds to a national side that can be competitive around the world. And also, almost more importantly than that, provide governance for all the clubs underneath it. The ECB are not, from what I can see, just not fit for purpose in terms of providing governance. I absolutely cannot believe that, 9 days afterwards, that everyone who came from that select committee is still in power, is still in their role and hasn't been moved on, because they just seem to not have a handle of what is going on at Yorkshire at all. Or, every day we hear in the news story from Essex, from Leicestershire, from wherever, from Middlesex, wherever, and the ECB just seem to be at sea at this, and there is no firm leadership coming through. I suspect that when this select committee report comes out, they'll be the people who, they'll be one of the people who have the report will be so damning they'll have to move on.
I don't think they will, though. Nothing will change the ECB. Like that thing needs a whole overhaul, and I don't know how that's going to happen unless it's sort of enforced on them. Like they said, the ECB said in the select committee hearing, that they have an independent panel which sort of adjudicates these things and oversees these things. But the independent panel is selected by the ECB. It's not even independently elected. So they are themselves picking the people who oversee them. So it's just a farce, and we've known for a long time. Me and Mark know people high up in the media who have told us loads of things about the ECB and how it's run and how poorly it's run. So
do you know what I like really irks me sometimes, right? When you're a Sri Lanka cricket fan, anything that goes wrong with Sri Lanka cricket, people just point at SLC, right? And they're like, oh, it's a badly run board, or they win it for themselves, or whatever, right? I generally, as somebody who follows cricket in England and follows cricket in Sri Lanka, I don't think there's any difference in terms of the competency, from what I can see, of the 2 boards. In fact, I'd possibly argue Sri Lankan cricket is probably slightly better, well run, because they've had
at least they do something, isn't it?
Yeah, where there's lots of. I'm not saying there isn't problems with Sri Lankan cricket. There is, and I'm not saying they couldn't be better run. I'm sure they can be, and I'm sure at some point down the line we can talk about Lanka Premier League and all that stuff. But I think Sri Lankan cricket is more proactive than the ECB are, in terms of if there was a problem, they'd have to solve it because the pressure they get from the ICC and everyone else is so large that there is actual threats on the Sri Lankan Cricket Board if they don't have their house in order. When all the corruption stuff was happening, they basically had to do something to stop it because they risked losing test status and losing the kind of golden egg, right? Where the ECB doesn't have any of that. There's pressure doesn't come on from anyone because they're guaranteed that the Ashes will take place. They're guaranteed that India will still turn up every couple of summers, right? There's no jeopardy above them. But yeah, like I was shocked. I found that the most shocking. Should we wrap it up there? Because I think
yeah, Mark, I think we are running out of time. I think that's a good place to stop, and we'll definitely have to catch up again to have to talk more about this topic. And obviously, during the Ashes, we'll try to do another episode. What do you think, Cora?
Yeah, I think we'd love to end on a serious note. I think it's a discussion that we need to, educate ourselves, and everyone can educate themselves about how to be a better person overall. Loved every minute of this episode with Tommy and Mark, and hopefully we can catch up mid Ashes or at the end of Ashes to review our predictions.
Yeah, I've got they're recording tail enders at the moment, so got Jimmy. No offense to you lads, but I've got to go do some work for Jimmy now.
mention us to Jimmy.
I will.
Get him on the pod.
We've not even got him on Murali.
Oh, that'll be great.
I'm still building up the courage to ask him.
Well, we'll go to Adelaide. That's his favorite town. So
yeah,
we'll go and see him.
Are you going to any of the tests?
I don't know. I might go to Boxing Day. Not 26, maybe like third day or something.
Nice.
Is it hard to get tickets for MCG?
No.
This year would be tough.
Yeah.
This year would be a big one because coming out of lockdown.
Yeah.
Boxing Day will be, but like the other days,
everything else would be alright.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of things that are happening between now and then, but I think I'll probably be in Melbourne next Christmas. So,
ooh, nice.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll be able to go to one of the Boxing Day days if you fancy it.
Do you mean as long as Chelsea doesn't dump you by then?
Yeah, as long as my girlfriend who's from Melbourne doesn't dump me. And well, I'm more worried about like Australia just getting shut down again and not being able to.
Yeah. I'm only messing. Sorry. I couldn't resist. Right, lads.
All right, thanks.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you for having me.
Sorry if I was just rambling on and talking nonsense. I don't know.
Tag me on I'm at Tom Andrew Stew. I'm the same on Instagram and Twitter. Great. All right, lads. Thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Enjoyed it. It was a lovely chat with you guys.